Now, the major parties have largely settled their presidential tickets, and barring any dramatic surprises, the contest appears to be narrowing around three familiar figures. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC, who is seeking re-election, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who's flying the flag of the ADC, and former Anambra Governor Peter Obi, who is carrying the hopes of the NDC. Meanwhile, the PDP's prolonged internal turmoil has left many questioning whether it remains a serious presidential force at all. And no one's quite sure what's going on with the Labour Party and the SDP, but beyond the horse race, what kind of democracy will Nigerians be voting in? At a time when concerns are growing over shrinking civic space, the arrest and remand of activists like Omoyele Sowore has reignited debates about dissent, state power and democratic freedoms. Add to that recent remarks from presidential spokesman Bayo Onanuga suggesting he does not see the widespread hunger many Nigerians complain about, and opponents saying there's a widening gap between official narratives and lived realities. So with a few months to go, what do the political fundamentals tell us? Well, for his assessment, I'm joined now in the studio by the scholar, political analyst, distinguished fellow of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, and overall blazing intellectual, Professor Udenta. Nice to see you.
It's a pleasure, Charles, to be with you once more.
And it's always a pleasure to have you here, to put it all in perspective for us. If you step back from the headlines and look at the political landscape as a whole, what is the single most important thing shaping the road to 2027 right now?
One will be the resilient spirit of the Nigerian people, including, incredibly, the Nigerian political elite. Charles, we've had multiple conversations here, and I've had that across other platforms, that one-party state structure that the president and his team design with active support of state institutions will not fly. I even went on into some sort of a joke that politicians are ghosts. The interior figures and forces permeating spaces from wars to other places. And you can see that. That's why he talked about Atiku Abubakar.
That sounds pretty frightening.
No, not frightening. That's the way they behave. You can't hold them down. They thought they could pigeonhole them with a rascally put together electoral election, that is electoral act amendment in 2026 that was specifically designed for the president, his party, and the established political order. And then ending guidelines that never gave hope to anybody to say 30th May. With PDP, with APC, with ADC and others, swarmed by multiple court cases. And NDC just 2, 3, 4 months old, that they will not be able to fly out of the blocks and then get over to 30th May. They did. Sometimes in the messy form, but they did. But crucially, you talked about these politicians. Atiku Abubakar, PDP, now ADC. P2B, Labour Party, now NDC. Thanks to movement, adaptation, I'm telling you about, mutation and adaptation, that they have to find spaces of survival. And millions of Nigerians responded in kind. So one major indicator, as we march on, is that resilient spirit that we are not going to allow this government to stay there longer than 29 May 2027.
So basically, what we're seeing is we're simply witnessing old political actors rearranging themselves under new banners.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, that's what you pretty much said.
That is at the level of personalities. Atiku Abubakar, P2B, but at the level of the fundamentals in terms of the organic driving forces. You can talk about PDP of Atiku 2023 being an established political party, at one time the biggest party in Africa. You can talk about the contraption called APC, a special purpose vehicle designed for power from Buhari to Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You can talk about Labour Party as a disruptive political force with the bidding movement embedded into its core. And the way that it transgressed upon the Nigerian state, it decides legally subverted that established order in 2023, and many claim they won. So 2027, there's a new incarnation in NDC.
And it's now the APC. So in other words, the APC, ADC, and NDC are the new sort of principal battle.
Yes, absolutely. But the difference is that the NDC now is remarkably different in terms of its betting. The way I'm forming.
And we do know you lean towards
I lean towards that, yes.
So let's be clear.
Absolutely. I'm not shy about that.
Sure.
The way it's formulated instantaneously became that kind of a wave. The obedient and the Kwankwasia movement clustering around, it means it's different from the rest of this order. There's a spirited attempt by the Nigerians to own it. In the street, if you see conversations across media spaces, sometimes territorial spaces and deterritorialized spaces, social media, the vibrant energy of the NDC, sometimes in a negative direction. is a consequence of this desire for people to find something different out of the lot.
Well, let me ask
that
you
is very
this.
important for us to note.
Right. Let me ask you this, and let me ask you to where, because I know you can be brutally independent when you want to, be, irrespective of which party you lean towards or not. At this moment, who genuinely has the upper hand going into 2027?
Okay, now.
The incumbent president, Tinubu, with the power of office, Atiku Abubakar with his apparent coalition building experience, or Peter Obi with his reformist appeal?
Okay, now let me break it down.
Objectively. Right.
June ending is still far off in terms of what will happen January 2027.
Right.
Let's just put that
that's why I said at this moment.
Perspective. Yeah. At this moment, the portents will give it to Peter Obi. And I will tell you, objectively speaking.
Well, your opponents would say, you would say that.
I don't tell you that, but it's for me to allow me to say whether my sense of the reading is objective enough. 2023, the same principal fellows, the three of them and the other minor parties around. The president has been locked in as a collector of 8-something million votes. Experience has taught us empirically that what you do in your first term is actually worse than what you do in your second term. Bid. Obama suffered that fate in 2012 as against 2008.
Well, I won't compare Nigeria and the United States.
Jonathan suffered that fate. 2015. Buhari suffered the fate in 2019. Many thought Atiku won. So this president will not do better 2027 than he did 2023.
Yeah, but the issue is not 2023. You said many people thought Atiku won in 2019. Many people thought Peter Obi won in 2023. Yeah. But who's in the presidency?
Absolutely. That's what I'm telling you. The 2027, what you see is a dramatic reversal of fortunes. He's going to be pinned down less than 8 million votes. Except mad people are there to vote for 2027. 8 million votes. Obi collected 6.something million, or allocated to him 6.something million votes, with virtually no northern presence. He had a placeholder in Doyin Okukpe of blessed memory. From the Southwest, there was nobody in the North who could rally around him to say, I'll be a running mate, until that time came calling. And of course, that is known for intellectual, firepower, university administration, but not as political, leader in that sense of being a mass movement person. Now you have a one person. A name we can't dismiss in enough.
Yes.
Coming on board to supply that missing link.
But at the same time,
that missing link. Yeah. That missing link means that energy in the North now will be deeper in range and breadth than before for him.
Well, that's one
way
of
he's not going to lose what he has already collected 2023. He will add up or that.
Yeah, but he doesn't.
The president will lose.
His opponents say that he doesn't have what he had in 2023 because a lot of the people who came into his coalition have left.
Like who?
Well, a lot of the people who supported
the people,
some of the
millions of Nigerians.
I'm not talking about there's no way of measuring that because you haven't.
You're talking about surrogates.
I'm talking
who speak for him.
No. I'm talking about people who worked with him.
That's surrogates.
Who occupied different positions.
That's elite surrogates.
Under his umbrella. Many of them have left.
No, I'm talking about distinction between elite leaders of political movements and the mass structure of that movement. If you look at energy of the mass level for B, 2027, 2026 is huge, bigger than 2023.
Yeah, but how do you arrive at that conclusion?
That conclusion is because he can see that NDC, as good a party as it was when it was bettered, was possibly looked as, I said, here's another small party down the block, maybe another XDP and so on and so forth. Suddenly, the movement of Obi and his obedience, the movement of Kwankwaso and the Kwankwaso movement, transformed the party now to be the most talked about.
Yeah, but do we know what the number, the followership is in tangible numbers? I'm not because even Kwankwaso himself, there is an argument that support he had in Kano, or the people he's built around his organization, Kwankwaso, has dissipated.
No, one thing
that is split into different groups.
One thing that is constant is that enigmatic personality, that image of the individual who is unchanging in terms of character and value.
You mean in terms of Dr. Kwankwaso?
Of course, and ideals.
Yeah, but I'm coming. But how far does he go beyond Kano State, even if he still has
opportunities come and go. But the idea is that the man of value, the man of sensibility remains constant. So governor can come, be made and disappear out of opportunistic consideration, self-survivor. He remains there. And the Kwankwaso movement is not the Kano-based movement. Kano-based ancestral rooting or home or base. It has spread across. The moment this campaign begins in NX, you see millions of the red hearts across the entire north, even bleeding to the south.
Yeah, but
and as I said, the base own movement of 2022-23 hasn't dissipated. It is concentrated more now. And many elite. Don't mind those who said have left. 2022 had a conversation here. I didn't work for him. I didn't speak for him.
Let me make a contrary argument. History suggests that incumbents are difficult to defeat in Nigeria, beyond the fluke that was 2015.
Okay.
That same history and some of the people who are the writers of that history.
That's objective history.
Are saying
database history.
Are suggesting, I'm going to say this to you and then you can respond to it. They're suggesting that Tinubu is still the favorite despite the economic hardship and public frustration, simply because, not because people love him to bits, but because he controls the levers of state power.
Okay, fine. Since this government incepted in 2023, we've discussed this matter almost ad nauseum. The dwindling or shrinking civic spaces, the brutal assault on labor centers, the weaponization via lawfare of the criminal justice system, the war declared on political parties, that is multi-party democracy, by a regime that has run rampant, some even saying tiptoeing into totalitarianism, not just even what they call authoritative sort of construct of power, a hybrid regime. We know that. We have told you here how the National Assembly was procured, literally speaking, to make amendment on the Electoral Act, not to enhance the political space, but to shrink it in the direction of getting the man literally re-enter into power. I've told you how INEC under Professor Mupitan, that other chairman of INEC, people waited until the election to do what? Condemn them, their moral failures. This one has been cast aside in moral atrophy by Nigerians before going to read through. He's been procured to do this. Talking about.
You're speaking generally without supplying any evidence to support what you're saying.
I can tell you one.
Right.
Since May 30 to now, what has INEC done with the parties? 2022, APC had its presidential primaries 7th August, if I'm not mistaken. You can fact check it. August. What has changed? We added Ghana to our population, added Niger Republic. How come the same INEC under this man stopped at 30th May? Because these parties have been racked by legal challenges. He didn't even think they would succeed in the primaries.
Let me ask
so
you.
that is one clear indicator that this INEC is not an independent, objectively existing INEC. So I say, despite of all this, the text is not going to be how you utilize the institutions. It's the will of the people. And the people are far better organized now, far better mobilized, far better way of what happened in 2023. The weaknesses of that struggle, how the infrastructure could be strengthened and retooled, how vote could be protected, mandate protection better now, how agents could be secured and trained, how smartphones could be deployed in the field. This was not done in 2023 for the Labour Party. So if you put all this on ground and it's 6 months of a vigorous campaign that will dismantle the false premises of this regime, which Bayo Nandoga was canvassing, they don't even think it was not about replying Obi. He came to tell you about what they're going to use, the instrument they will use to litigate the election. The reply to Obi was a carefully constructed strategic statement. This is how we're going to fight this battle. So if you don't dismantle it ab initio, at the level of to lose this election, Nigeria must tell the president, security-wise, under Buhari 8 years failed presidency, were we better secure then than now? We're better secure. Food prices and cost of living crisis haunting the nation. Are we better then than now? We're better then than now. Fuel price, we're better then than now. Cooking gas, better then than now. Those with comorbidities, diabetes, heart issues, high blood pressure, the drugs you purchased then, are they cheaper now than before? They are now more expensive. I can attest to it. This is what Nigerians are going to hold this man responsible, his team. However, they dance around macroeconomic pyrotechnics and dance with figures supplied by neoliberal institutions and power centers across the world. We hold them that this election is not about P2B or even Atiku. It's about Bola Tinubu's second time.
Right.
What record will he run on?
A lot of people.
So he's going to win. Right. Peter is going to win on the basis of what I put him before you.
A lot of people would argue that there are two things here. One of that is maybe you're making points that a lot of Nigerians can relate to. But when it comes to that fundamental issue of when the ballots are cast and the results are declared, who emerges the winner?
Yes.
The people are systematically looking at the progression towards 2027. One of the recent examples is Ekiti State.
Yeah.
What happened in Ekiti State? What was the margin of victory?
Okay, I can talk about that.
Yeah, very briefly before we move on.
Very important. Off-season elections, especially at the subnational level, can never be a text. I don't know about the Ekiti election, how well it was organized, how representative it was of people's choice, the choice they made on the ground in the field. It may well be, it may not be. I wasn't an observer. I've not studied the data. But generally speaking, broad sense of looking at, when they talk about trend lines, off-season elections there, with concentrated power, 12 governors or 15 governors there, with the entire mission of the state poured into it there, one single election there, one environment, it is easy for a party that has even failed miserably to manage a win. When it comes to general election in every constituency, in every precinct, every voting ground, every household, you're going to scatter those resources.
Okay.
So in order to police the Nigerians in every sanctuary they have. When you do that there, it levels up.
Right.
There's equalization of a certain level will occur. You have an advantage, I agree, but it will levels up considerably.
Okay.
So you're not going to be concentrated power in the Ekiti State or in Enugu State when they have an off-season, senatorial election there. You can do whatever much you want to do there.
Right. Let me ask you this, because we're fast running out of time. I asked you at the outset, who do you think has the capacity? I mean, who if an election was
The trend lines in terms
right?
of
What is the trend? I mean, where are people leaning? Let me ask you a question another way.
Okay.
What is the biggest obstacle facing each of the three leading contenders today? If you had to identify one fatal weakness for Tinubu, one for Atiku, and one for Obi, what would they be?
For Tinubu, is glaring.
Right, so let's move on.
No, it's a glaring
and
a miserable failure of his policies
you've already
and
said
programs.
that. What about Atiku and Obi?
Atiku, I said some weeks ago, and I got a lot of flack from a lot of people. I'm not impersonal against Atiku. I worked for him. I spoke for him last time around. I was the deputy DG 2010. And in 2019, I was very helpful to some invisible infrastructure put together. So it's somebody I know very well, respect very well.
You mean
But
invincible?
Yes, infrastructure.
Right, okay. Invincible. I thought you said invisible.
Invisible.
But invincible.
Invisible.
Right,
No,
okay.
no, invisible, not invincible.
Oh, invisible.
Nobody saw that.
Okay, I wanted to be sure.
Walked off the rank of the shadows,
right.
and so on. But very important, very potent. Now, his problem, as I said, is structural. Is the South. You need 25% of the votes in 24 states. I don't see how he's going to get 10% of the votes in any single state in the South. That's a structural problem. Because the Southern presidency, people are saying it's a turn of the South. We like a collective Southern in Miloku to say, this is our thing now. You wait for 2031. So the Southern control is going to be a battle between the president and P2B. No doubt whatsoever. So even if you do very well in the North, you will never get that margin to say the 25%, even 5 or 6 or 7 Southern states to bridge that. Obi's popularity is immense. His party is good now, but it's a new party. So his infrastructure is not yet rooted. I'm sure that 6-7 months, if it is not rooted by 6-7 months, as it ought to be, and even spread across the breadth and length of the country, maybe that's a warning sign. But if it is, with the raw energy of the Biden movement, the nothingness of the party, the Kwampasiya thing bleeding into that, and then the Nigerian people desiring for change, it is his election to lose.
If you were advising Nigerian voters tonight, what one question should they ask every presidential candidate before handing over their vote?
The biggest question we go to the president. For Atiku, he's been well litigated and well scrutinized over 30 years. There's nothing more they don't know about him.
No, but I'm not talking about so much. I mean, I'm talking about what fundamental strategic question should they be asked? For example, you mentioned the issue of Atiku not waiting till 2030.
I'm saying that they will not even ask that. They will simply say, we know who you are.
Right.
We know how well disposed you are to governance. We know how strong you are. We know how great your mind is. They already have that sorted out. So they're going to ask that question, is he the person for us now? For the president, as I said, he will run on his record. And that record is miserable. For Obi, he doesn't need to do much. He said, I actually want 2023. Come back again. People said, repeat what you did, but now in a larger scale. And with northern sector now heavily fortified, more than before, I don't think they'll take this away from us or snatch it away from us and run. So the people will not even ask me any question further. They will simply say, you want this thing apparently. They didn't give it to you. Let us go and repeat in 2027 what we did in 2023.
Well, that's your assessment.
That's my take.
Which is a personal assessment.
That is what I think may be reflective of what I call the compact majority, the soul of a nation embedded in the core of the people. A people, not the 1% who don't see hunger, or who don't see poverty in the land, but the millions of Nigerians who say in 2023, out of nothing, nothingness, the bigness occurred, the Labour Party took form, and the biddings waited with content. And he won. They said, okay, you may dispute whether he won. Here I told you, the range of the landfall of the obedience movement on Obi will be immense, but it may not have the full breadth and the depth to secure that totally controverted victory. Now I believe that the people will say, we have to do better than we did 4 years ago. And in doing so, we have to decapitate any pretense to the contrary that he won that election.
But as we said, it's the real test is what will happen in 2026.
Absolutely.
And we'll have to wait.
I accept that.
Prof, it's always an absolute pleasure to have you here. Professor Udenta Udenta is a scholar, political analyst, and distinguished fellow of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you again.
It's a pleasure.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.